everyone, and welcome back to Transfer Weekly. This episode number 9 now on Feeder Series. I'm your host, Chris McCarthy. What another week it has been for the Feeder Series and for transfers. We have completed, finally, the FIA Formula 2 grid. As you can see, I'm not in my usual settings. This is going to be a very international show, not for me exactly, but definitely for our guests. Very excited to welcome our karting editor. You may have seen him on the podcast recently. He's also commentating on the Formula Regional Middle East Championship and the UAE F4 Championship as well. Jake Sanson, thank you very much for joining us. Great to catch up with you again, mate. How are things going over there? You're in Kuwait, where there hasn't been any racing, I don't think, ever. So how's it going over there?
Yeah, it's been a really good start. The circuit was only finished in 2019, and obviously we were going to go racing, but then a rather irritating little lockdown pandemic got in the way. So this is the first year that the circuit's ever been able to really go motor racing. It's certainly the first feeder series Formula weekend circuit. The drivers love it. The facilities are fantastic. I'd say they're probably comparable to Yas Marina in the UAE. And it has the potential to be a future Formula One venue.
Well, I know it's been an exciting week for you as well. You made some announcements, and as our karting editor, we'll definitely talk about those a little bit later in the show. But I want to bring in our next guest as well, someone you will recognize from being on the show before, our F3 editor, Michael McClure. Michael, all the way over from the US, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a big day for F3 as well. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. How's it been for yourself? It's moving quickly in F3, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the off season is always a busy time. I mean, for F3 this year, it started all the way back in September when Bortoleto was announced, and obviously testing going on in a few weeks. So we should have the grid fully pieced together by then. So it's been really cool to see it all come together. Looks like a strong lineup shaping up with a number of great names stepping up from Formula Regional, as well as some big stars continuing from last year's F3 campaigns.
Yeah, it's going to be an absolutely fantastic season. Right, let's get into our transfers as we always do. We're going to start at the top. We have finally completed our FIA Formula 2 grid. We had this mystery seat, but it got confirmed by MP Motorsport last week that it is indeed going to be Jehan Daruvala racing for MP Motorsport. He makes the switch over from Prema. It's going to be his 4th season now racing in Formula 2. Not the best of seasons for him last year, finishing in 7th overall. It's going to be the 3rd team he's now raced with after Carlin and Prema. Jake, I want to come to you for this. I mean, Jehan Daruvala, a man who is really heavily supported. He's proven his worth in the feeder series over the years. This is going to be a really big season for him now, isn't it? He's going into the team that's won the championship. There's definitely going to be a lot of pressure on it.
There's definitely going to be pressure. I'd say he looks like an early favourite based on the fact that he has won F2 before, and MP Motorsport were really strong in the post-season tests as well. They really seem to have found something at the end of the season as well. But yeah, it's been very interesting watching, Jehan continue his progress. I've been watching him for 11 years now, and I can still remember when we used to call him Jehan Daruvala. So it's been an interesting battle watching him go up through the ranks of karting, through the junior single-seater ladder, and here he is in F2, one step away from Formula One. I think there's a lot of people in India who want to see him get into Formula One. It's been quite a while now since Karun Chandok and Narayan Karthikeyan were in the sport, so there's a lot of Indian interest to get him there. But I think it does, unfortunately, have to come off the back of a strong season in Formula 2 rather than just throwing money at it. I don't really think you could call Jehan a pay driver. He really does have to prove it in terms of worth. He has to showcase that he is able to take on a Formula 1 role. Which team that would end up being with, I think that's a very tough one to call at the moment. He kind of has to find his feet now that he's not part of the Red Bull program anymore. So this is definitely make or break for Jehan.
Yeah, I mean, 1 win, 8 podiums. That's a lot of podiums. It's almost, he gets very close to taking the wins. It's just getting those wins for him, isn't it, where he falls short. You mentioned there, he did lose his Red Bull seat. Do you think that's going to relieve some pressure for Jehan going into this season now? And almost like we saw with Felipe Drugovich, he didn't really have the pressure of an F1 team behind him, and he absolutely walked away with it. Now he has an F1 team behind him and has a role as a reserve driver. Do you think that's going to help him out in a way?
I think it will. Do you know, I think it's a double-edged sword actually being part of a Formula One junior driver program. I think you look at the people that have been doing it for the last 2 or 3 seasons, there's only really been, less than a handful of drivers that have actually converted it into a Formula One seat. And if you look at the competitors that have been part of the Red Bull and the Alpine seats in particular, of those academies, it's very difficult to sustain. Whereas the drivers within the Mercedes and Ferrari young driver folds, perhaps they've got a little bit more longevity to them. We haven't seen anybody go from the Mercedes young driver program to Formula One since George Russell. And the Ferrari Young Drivers Academy, well, that tends to create a lot of sports car racing opportunities as much as it does looks at opportunities for IndyCar or Formula One. So it is a bit of a difficult one. It does put pressure on a driver. And to be honest, Jehan is the kind of person who has already lived through a lot of that pressure. He was part of the Force India Young Driver program in karting over a decade ago. He's now been involved with Red Bull. I think it would be quite nice for him to not have to worry about, which Formula One team might sign him. I think he can just go into this season knowing his objectives, gunning for the victory with the best team from last year. He has a real chance to become Formula 2 champion in 2023.
Well, it's certainly going to be very interesting to watch. Let us know your predictions in the comments below. Jehan Daruvala completes the grid now for 2023. Really interested to see who takes that first win in Bahrain in just a few weeks' time. Right, let's go from Formula 2 to Formula 3 then. Genza announced their first driver for 2023, and that was with the signing of Mexican driver Alex Garcia, who makes the step up from EuroFormula Open. He did a couple of seasons in Spanish F4. Before that, he's also going to be racing in the European Le Mans Series this season with Cool Racing as well. So splitting his options there, whether he's going to go into endurance or single-seater racing. 7th overall, he was in EuroFormula Open last season, Michael. So not the best of seasons for him, but it was a big step, wasn't it, going up from Spanish F4? How do you think he's going to fare now with Genza in F3?
Absolutely. Well, it looks like looking over Garcia's career, he's one who does take these big steps. Obviously, his first 2 years in Spanish F4 were not the strongest. He did take a couple of points finishes here and there, but it looked like he made a good amount of progress going up into EuroFormula, obviously taking that podium towards the end of the year in Monza. So this next one is really going to be a challenge for him, but I know that a lot of drivers do intend to step up after maybe not the strongest seasons in lower series, just to acclimatize themselves to those more difficult environments. Get that experience in the Formula One paddock as well, next to it in the F2, F3 area, of course. And one thing that's really interesting about Garcia is this double campaign in sports cars. We've seen a couple of drivers trial this over the years, most notably Juan Manuel Correa has been doing it. And so Garcia, for him, potentially it's heralding the beginning of a career pivot into LMP3 or LMP2 racing. And that he's obviously lining up alongside Marco Siebert, who Feeder Series fans may remember was 3rd place in EuroFormula Open way back when, and also an Italian F4 champion. So for sure, a lot he can learn from that, and also in Genza, an environment that is known for training drivers very well. Tsunoda came through there in Formula 3 before stepping up to F1 a couple of years later. So I'm sure that no matter where Garcia finishes, it'll be a good environment for him to learn. In testing, he may not have been the most impressive. He was usually sort of trundling around the back of the timesheets. But for him, it's a year where he's going to hope to make a lot of progress and get towards that, at least that midfield where Genza has been able to put their cars before.
Yeah, let's see how he gets on with that. But as we see, it's going to be interesting to see how he does in LMP3. Well, we covered F2, we covered F3. Now we're going to go to FRECA. This is a signing I'm certainly very, very excited about. And it comes over at Trident, who have completed their driver lineup for 2023. And that was with the signing of French junior driver Owen Tangavelu, who switches over from RPM, where he completed his season last year, finished off the season at Mugello with a rookie win, and his best result of the season with a 6th place finish. A very impressive drive. Having switched across from G4 Racing halfway through the year, he now completes the Trident driver lineup. Michael, Trident, firstly, very impressive driver lineup, just like they had last season. But Owen Tangavelu put in some really impressive performances. The second half of his season was really impressive last year. He's going to be a dark horse this season, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at last year, halfway through the season when he made that switch, I think a lot of people didn't really expect him to make as much progress as he did. Obviously, getting that rookie win at the end of the year, really stepping up and becoming a consistent point scorer in a team that, mind you, was brand new last year. RPM hadn't really raced before. Trident is also a newer team. This is going to be their second season, and they've got an established lineup now with Belinsky as well leading the team, and Tangavelu already with a year of experience. And of course, Nick Hilbora coming off the back of his first Formula Regional win, in fact, first win in single-seaters in European and Asian single-seaters last weekend out a couple weeks ago in Dubai. So it's going to be a great lineup at Trident. For Tangavelu, he's also someone who's had an interesting career, somebody who started quite late in racing. I believe he was maybe 14 when he began racing just nationally and then stepped up to F4 quite quickly. So someone who's shown that he's had to adapt quite quickly to new challenges. Obviously, in his second season, he'll be looking to become a consistent force, taking podiums, potentially even fighting for Trident's first win in Formula Regional, which will be a goal that all three drivers will be hoping to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, for Roman and Owen, it's going to be going for, as you said, for podiums and wins. He's definitely a driver that likes to get his elbows out, that's for sure. And he put in some really exciting performances last year. So really excited to see how he gets on. But that is the driver lineup complete over at Trident in FRECA. And we will keep you updated here on Transfer Weekly with who goes where in FRECA and F3 as we move forward. Right, let's cover off some of the other news that has happened in the feeder series. We've covered off the transfers now, but let's cover off some of the news related to those. I want to start at EuroFormula Open, and they had some exciting news last week that they're going to be returning to Po this season. There was some speculation whether they were going to be going back there, with it not being in the initial calendar, but it has been announced that the Po Grand Prix is coming back, and it's going to replace Mugello in the calendar. We have a man on this show who has been there. So, Jake, I have to ask you a little bit about this. I mean, that's going to be a very exciting round, isn't it? Seeing the drivers go around there in those cars in particular.
It certainly is. I mean, the Grand Prix de Po is still one of the toughest challenges in feeder series racing worldwide. It's up there with Macau. It's up there with the British Grand Prix support race. It is such a big deal for the young driver to go up ahead and win it. And it has really tested some of the greats in the world of motor racing in the past. I can remember being there in 2017 when Lando Norris was actually leading the race and dominating before he just got it slightly up on the top of the curbs and ended up throwing it into the barriers, as many drivers have done in the past. It was actually Maxi Gunther that came through to win that day. And of course, he's now made a career for himself in Formula E. So a fabulous opportunity for a driver to really wrestle with the elements. I think it's actually a harder race to win than the Monaco Grand Prix is. There are so many more opportunities to throw it away. Just as many elevation changes, just as many tight hairpins, but with a few more overtaking opportunities than perhaps you'd see at Monaco as well for the daredevil driver. So you really can make a fantastic race of it. The atmosphere and the vibe of the place is absolutely amazing. Everybody is there for the same reason. The whole city is crazy about cars and the automobile world and racing. So it's a wonderful environment. I think EuroFormula Open is the right feeder series to go and do it. I think it's going to give the cars, which I think are just about the right size to go racing around Po, a good spectacle. So it is definitely going to be worth going to. And I'm hoping this year to get there myself, even if it's not in a work capacity. I love the place. I love the vibe, and I really want to be there again.
Yeah, well, I echo those thoughts. I mean, it's going to, I think, a great challenge and great practice for drivers to get used to racing in places like I said, Monaco, Baku, Singapore in the future for those racing in EuroFormula who no doubt want to go on and race in Formula One. Okay, other news relating to teams that are going to be racing in these feeder series, the likes of Po as well. This relating to Carlin. Rodin Cars became the majority shareholder of Carlin last week, and the team is now going to be renamed Rodin Carlin. Michael, I just want to get some more information from you about this. I mean, there's going to be no changes in terms of the personnel to the team. Trevor Carlin has said that's all going to stay the same, but this could only be good news for another majority shareholder to be coming in.
You know, a lot of people are going to look at this and say, based on Carlin's words, it's mostly cosmetic, but it does say a lot about kind of what's happening behind the scenes at Carlin. The real big development here is that Graham Chilton, who you may know is the father of Max Chilton, former Formula One racer, and Tom Chilton, who's in touring cars and has been for almost 2 decades now. Graham Chilton was an investor in Carlin early on in the late 2000s, and now he's stepped away. He's sold his majority stake through Capsicum, and now the team has passed on to Rodin, who, as obviously you may know, sponsored not only Liam Lawson in Formula 2 last year at the team, but also Lewis Sharp, who is in British F4 and also F4 UAE, won the trophy race in November. So really shows that, at least for Sharp in particular, who's going to continue at the team this year, it looks like there's the potential for a long-term investment there and also a real long-term partnership. And Ronan in particular is an interesting addition because they're the sort of niche luxury car maker, hypercars, single-seater cars. They make them. They're based in New Zealand. And you don't usually get these car companies, even the ones that are more private, investing in junior single-seater teams like this. A partnership like theirs, especially these days, is quite rare. So it's a really interesting thing, and it's potentially heralds maybe a change where other car makers or other like private companies like this are going to invest more in this series. Rodin has their own fleet of test single seaters, and I know Liam Loss has done a good amount of miles in as well. So it's an interesting partnership, and we could see maybe, you know, Carlin drivers making those trips over to New Zealand to do those tests and get more experience in single seaters, which is obviously so crucial for their development.
Yeah, and given they're already bringing a driver straight up from British F4 into Formula 3 this year as well, I think it's very exciting to have someone sponsoring some drivers backing the team like this as well. So we wish Carlin all the best for this season, and thank you to Michael for the insight there. Okay, let's move now from Carlin over to Campos Racing. They announced last week that they're going to be competing in the Formula Winter Series this season. They become the 9th team to officially announce they are going to be competing in the series, along with the likes of Carlin. They also joined Genza, PHM Racing as well, so other Formula 3 teams on there as well. Jake, I want to get your thoughts on this. I mean, we haven't had any drivers announced to this. This is an F4 series, a winter series. I know you're currently doing a winter series over in the Middle East, but this is one that's going to be based over in Spain. What do you make of this, a winter series for F4 drivers, a little bit closer to home?
I mean, it's certainly a good concept if it takes off, but I have to say I'm erring on the side of caution already, knowing that the first race weekend is going to be on the 11th and 12th of February, and we still haven't heard anything about drivers that are going to be competing in it. I mean, that first round of the championship is a fortnight away. So the fact that there are no drivers announced at all does make me a little bit cautious. Is this ambition over substance? I really hope it isn't, because obviously I do think that Spain and Portugal in particular are kind of the best countries to be going winter racing if you're in F4 at that sort of level. We've certainly had it in the world of karting before, when you spend your winter in sort of Italy and Spain because it's the warmer part of the climate. So I don't see any reason why there shouldn't be a winter series in the hotter parts of the Mediterranean for F4 drivers. I mean, obviously more track time is obviously really beneficial for the youngsters. If they can get an opportunity to do another 2 or 3 weekend championship, then why on earth not? But it just has me a little bit cautious, knowing that we're 2 weeks away from the starting of that and we still don't have a clue who's going to be driving.
No, I guess it does give chance for people to maybe compete in the Middle East and for a couple of rounds, maybe get back. And maybe that's the thinking. We will find out. I guess it's a new concept. We don't know much about it yet, but we'll find out more, and we'll keep you posted here on Transfer Weekly. Okay, let's talk about another team then, and that is MP Motorsport, because they became the second team to announce that they're going to be competing in the new Euro Cup 3 series this season. This has become an alternative series to FRECA and to EuroFormula Open as well. Palou Motorsport became the first team. Alex Palou is going to be the driver who's backing that team, the IndyCar champion. And now MP Motorsport have become the latest team to announce that they're going to be competing in this. Jake, I want to get your thoughts again on this. I mean, MP is a big team. So for Euro Cup 3, this is a really good news to have Alex Palou, of course, a Spanish IndyCar champion in there with back in the championship, which is going to be supported by Spanish F4 and now MP Motorsport as well. That's got to be great news for them.
Yeah, it's a big endorsement into the Euro Cup 3 campaign, which of course doesn't kick off until early May. So that gives us plenty of time for teams to confirm, to sign up, to test drivers, to get them ready for the season. And that really does show the sort of the statement of intent from Euro Cup 3 and the promoters who, of course, as you mentioned, also run Spanish F4. They're really serious about making it work. They want to make sure that there is a good stock between F4 and Formula Regional, and the Euro Cup 3 car has the potential to do that. Having looked at their product, I think it's obviously going to be a very interesting 2023 season. They need to make sure that it's got good legs. They're obviously doing it alongside Spanish F4 for the time being. Whether it has legs to take off and grow in other markets, we obviously have to use this year as a test bed to see how it's going to go. But certainly the signs are good. There's a long wait until the first race of the season. So I have a feeling that this is the championship, which certainly has a lot of endorsement behind it.
And Michael, I want to get your thoughts. What do you think about Formula Winter Series so far, what we're hearing from it, and Euro Cup 3 as well? I mean, of course, we're getting a lot of teams in that Formula Winter Series. NP Motorsport, the second team now, a second big team to sign up to Euro Cup 3 as well. Are these things, our F3 editor, do these championships excite you so far?
Well, I think Formula Winter Series is maybe not something that it will affect sort of F3 as directly, but Euro Cup 3 is a really interesting one because it pairs up and it fills this niche that EuroFormula Open tried to do. But maybe if we go back a few years to what used to be Spanish F3, which also used to be integrated with EuroFormula Open, it's kind of the successor series to that, and that it's primarily based in Spain in the Iberian Peninsula, where there's a lot of great racetracks. Barcelona, Jerez, Estoril, even Portimao, which is not on this year's calendar, but could feature in the future. A lot of great tracks there. It does surprise me that there hasn't been more concrete momentum about, teams announcing themselves for Euro Cup or drivers. But what I have to imagine is perhaps the reverse situation what we're seeing in Formula Winter Series, that there's just a lot of negotiations going on behind the scenes, teams and drivers trying to figure it out. Obviously, the FRECA grid for this year hasn't even, I think, come even halfway to being filled up. So no. I'm sure that will also affect, who lines up where, who lines up maybe even in EuroFormula Open this year with the, the whole POW announcement is a big deal for them. That's a real draw to that series. So a lot of things still to be put in place. I'm hopeful the Winter Series kicks off. I obviously love the winter racing. It's a great way to fill up time when you've not got the main series going on. But obviously, with the strength of what's going on in the Middle East right now, it is a little bit hard to imagine that along with obviously the return of Formula Regional Oceania, or what was formerly Toyota Racing Series, it is a bit hard to see who will line up in Formula Winter Series just because of the breadth of series available now.
And before we wrap up, thanks for your insight there, Michael. But before we wrap up, Jake, just very quickly, as our karting editor, I mean, we can't ignore this news on this show at all. Tame Saleh has joined the Sauber Junior program. This, Michael, giving us this insight just before we click the record button. I mean, tell us a little bit about this driver and how exciting it is to see them getting backed by Sauber.
It is exciting for Tame Saleh. He does have a really good future in the sport. He's one of the youngsters that's really started to evolve in the OK Junior categories over the last 2 seasons of international competition. And he's definitely been a front runner, certainly for the last 9 months or so of international karting in the FIA paddocks, in WSK and in Champions of the Future. So he's definitely one to watch for. Sauber picking him up is also a statement of intent. He clearly has the tenacity. He made some big strides towards the tail end of the season, particularly in the World Championship last year at Sarno. So he's definitely a name to watch out for. And with the spat of German talent that we've had coming out of karting in the last 5-6 years, he is the latest one to add to that. And if he keeps on the road that he's currently looking at the moment, he is likely to follow in the footsteps of some of the others that have been in the Sauber Academy recently, such as Maciej Gladish, who's already won an FIA, WSK and Champions of the Future title in the last 2 years. So Tame Saleh definitely putting himself into a good position. It's just about getting to know the race team and to give himself the best chance of going up for those big results. I think this weekend in WSK is going to actually be very telling to see how the deal works out.
And on karting, we have to, you had some big news coming in last week. Tell us, of course, as our karting editor, what you're going to be doing this season, because I know you made the announcement last week.
I did indeed. Well, I'm very delighted to say that I'm still going to be involved in RGMMC's motorsport activities in 2023. I'm now re-signed, so I'm going to be the voice of the FIA Karting European and World Championships, Champions of the Future, and the IAMI Euro Series, as well as the iGames towards the end of the season. It's a big deal to me. It's very personal. Of all of the feeder series categories up through the junior formulas and everything, I still have a massive passion for karting. You get more action in one 12-minute karting heat than you do in many of the other fascinating battles in other forms of racing. So these kids have all gone on to big stuff. 3 of the drivers that I commentated on in my karting days are now in Formula One: George Russell, Lando Norris, and Zhou Guanyu. So it is pretty exciting to see how these guys develop. They work up through the ladder. Pretty much 90% of the drivers I'm commentating on in Formula Regional Middle East and F4 UAE all came from that paddock. So it's wonderful to be reunited with them and to see their progression. But I always look forward to seeing how the next generation are going to progress. And I really hope that in 2023, FIA Series fans are going to really get to see the first taster of what these kids have to offer the motorsport world in future.
Well, on behalf of from all the viewers and the team, congratulations. We wish you all the best for the season as well. And we look forward to getting all the insight here on FIA Series as well. So all the best for it, Jake. Now, very quickly, we have to make this quick before we wrap up. Both your thoughts. We're going to finish where we started the show, back at Formula 2. Thoughts ahead of the season now the grid's complete. Michael, I'll come to you first. What are you thinking ahead of the season now everyone's on the table?
Well, what an incredible driver lineup we have. I think that's the biggest thing to emphasize. All of the top 7 drivers from last year's F3 title battle, which you can really only describe as absolutely titanic. It was incredible. And they're all going to be stepping up, several of them into front-running teams. And of course, they will be fighting against some of the best drivers from last season. Théo Pourchaire is coming back for a 3rd year, somewhat controversially, but we'll see. He's an obvious title candidate. So is Jack Doohan, who was obviously one of the front-runners last year, taking pole positions and wins, and a number of other great names. Frederick Vesti comes to mind, Ayumu Iwasa, of course, and obviously this whole crop of rookies. So really, from strength to strength, every seat on the grid is really filled by somebody who's either a title contender, a victory contender, or someone who could make huge strides this year. So I'm absolutely pumped to see what goes on. Hopefully we'll get the chance to go in the paddock a couple of times this year as well and really get the on-the-ground lowdown of what's going on. But it should be a really fantastic season.
And Jake, what about yourself?
It's a tough one. Formula 2 is definitely going to be particularly competitive this year. I'm really baffled that there's going to be 6 drivers in Formula 2 who are part of the Red Bull Junior Academy. I think that's fraught with disaster. I have a feeling there's going to be so many talents racing under the same colours that it's just going to cause ignominy and a lot of infighting, which could be obviously entertaining for us, but it's definitely going to cause some friction out there. For me, I think it's one of 4 drivers that'll win the title this year. I think it's either going to be Théo Pourchaire, Jack Doohan, Jehan Daruvala, or I'm going to throw a real curveball into the mix. I think Isaac Hajar actually has a real opportunity to pull something pretty special out of the bag. We saw some good performances from him in F3. There's a real opportunity for him to storm forward, and I really think he could have something special this year. But then again, all 4 of them need to watch out for Oliver Behrman. He could provide something very special as a rookie. He could just come in and storm it all. If anybody's going to do it as a rookie, I think you need to watch Behrman.
Well, as the man who asked the questions, I don't have to give an answer, and I'm really glad this season that I don't, because it is far too difficult. Jake, look, thanks for taking the time. I know it's a very busy weekend over for you in Kuwait, and I hope you have a really great rest of this season. Thank you very much for joining us, and all the best for this season with our GMMC as well. Michael, I'm sure we'll have you back for some more F3 updates very soon. Jake, likewise as well. I'm sure we'll get you back here on Transfer Weekly soon. Thank you all to the viewers for tuning in. This has been Transfer Weekly. Thank you very much for tuning in. Do like, do subscribe, and do get all your updates over on FIA Series for the Formula Regional Middle East Championship, UAE F4, and Formula Regional Oceania Championship as well. We'll be back at the same time next week for episode 10. For now, though, it's goodbye.